Iron Crown covers the Pokemon that would beat the Regidrago very, very nicely. Of course, Terra Fairy is the main reason, and we'll have to see if that's going... Wow, speaking of, you don't usually lead with both of them. It seems like that's what Roberto's going with here.
Yeah, we have the Regidrago next to the Iron Crown and a couple of information pieces to get through. The Cork Drive giving a special attack boost here to this Iron Crown, and then we ended up seeing the Porygon 2 go ahead and get its download boost.
Yeah, and you've got Fake Out available, and of course, you got to contend with the Indeedee. Indeedee could just be waiting in the back, so it doesn't allow a safe Fake Out to be able to get the Trick Room. However, I don't know if that's entirely necessary. I reckon that Porygon 2, as bulky as it is, can stand in the face of a Dragon Energy and a Tachyon Cutter from Iron Crown. I think it would be incredibly close, but Eric's not going for that, playing it safe, going for that Fake Out, no Indeedee switch in.
Yeah, I would definitely be a little bit nervous to have to face that, especially if there is a critical hit involved. So I think the Fake Out makes a lot of sense to neutralize the Regidrago on this turn. Porygon 2 is free to set up the Trick Room, and now you see these two pretty fast Pokemon in the Iron Crown and the Regidrago out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, this is a pretty reasonable position now. You did get away with getting that Trick Room. The Tachyon Cutter did more than I expected. I wouldn't actually have been surprised if Dragon Energy would have been able to pick up the KO on that Porygon 2, even as bulky as it is. But now, because the Trick Room has been active, usually the Iron Crown teams, if Trick Room is on the field, that's not so ideal for them because they tried to burst through with damage, and now the damage can happen first on Eric's side of the field.
Eric is going to be able to utilize the Incineroar. With the Assault Vest means you've got 4 attacks available, and so pick your poison. And it's going to be the Terra Water for this Iron Crown, so it is going to neuter some of the ability of this knockoff to deal that super effective damage. The Regidrago has also protected itself in the form of just a Protect Shield. Porygon 2, the first to move on an actual attack, is going to use Recover to get rid of all of the damage that the Iron Crown dealt with the Tachyon Cutter, and that is going to be where this turn ends, as actually the Iron Crown is going to go for the Terra Blast into the Incineroar. It is just going to do a good chunk of damage, but not quite enough for a knockout.
Yeah, the Assault Vest really helping out there, but Roberto definitely got the better end of that turn. Yes, the Porygon 2 is now completely healthy once again, but that was a much better damage trade for Roberto there, because of course, even though it didn't pick up the knockout Incineroar, it will two-shot it. So now it does have to contend with, do I stay on the field, still get that knockoff into, well, what was the Regidrago, maybe something else instead, switching in. I'd like to knock off the Indeedee, but that allows us Expanding Force to be active now.
That's true. Psychic Surge activated once this Indeedee switches in, will set up that Psychic Terrain to allow that Expanding Force to be a spread attack. Terra Blast is just going to do a little bit of damage. Indeedee, it has that Rocky Helmet to boost up the power of that knockoff, but now it is gone. Hangs on with just a little bit, but the Expanding Force isn't going to actually connect onto the Incineroar because of that Dark typing. Porygon 2, though, gets brought down to half. Still a couple of room turns remaining.
Yeah, and I think the momentum's still on Roberto's side, because we saw there the Terra Blast did not really do much damage, getting the attack boost instead of the special attack boost. Really coming back to bite the Porygon there, because I think the Iron Crown's still in a reasonably nice position here. I think for Eric, at least the Porygon 2 is underspeeding the Incineroar, so that can KO the Indeedee, and then the Incineroar will be redirected into the Iron Crown instead. And I think it would have been slightly better the other way around for Roberto. But yeah, the Indeedee probably going down this turn, so doing what it can and going for that Helping Hand.
Helping Hand is going to boost up the power of this Iron Crown. If it goes for the Expanding Force, it feels like it's just going to keep forcing this Porygon 2 to have to go for the Recover. But the knockoff goes into the Iron Crown, and since there is no item available with that booster energy being consumed at the beginning of the game, it's not going to be doing that much damage. Expanding Force in response, though, yeah, this Porygon 2 is definitely on borrowed time.
Yeah, when I think we're on the last turn of Trick Room here as well, because Roberto was able to stall it out with a Hyper Offense team expertly here.
That's hard to do.
It's very hard to do, especially in the quarterfinals of an international championship. Because, yeah, the Porygon 2 can try to go for a Recover, but even if you go for Follow Me and Expanding Force and don't KO the Porygon 2, it should be in range of that attack on the next turn, and then Trick Room will be over, and Roberto's completely free to go on the offense.
Follow Me helps this Iron Crown dish out that last bit of damage as Porygon 2 is forced to turn its direction towards that Indeedee. Gets knocked out for its troubles, but hopefully has bought this Iron Crown enough time to get a final attack off. Incineroar goes for another knockoff, still no item for it to be able to actually boost up that damage. And this poor Porygon is going to get knocked out on this turn. Incineroar's actually done quite a bit, though. You've traded blow for blow with the supportive Pokemon on Roberto and Eric's side.
Yeah, but that's the Trick Room over, and that's no longer available for Eric's side of the field because the Porygon has been felled. Here comes the Ogerpon, though, respecting the fact that even though Trick Room was the initial strategy here, Fluttermane was brought to respect the Regidrago. So, yeah, we're going to see what boost the Fluttermane is going to get. It was speed for Nils Dunlop when he had it, but it's special attack here for Eric Rios instead. And now it depends on the training between the Fluttermane and the Ogerpon, because a special attack boosting Fluttermane is not necessarily faster than a max speed Ogerpon. We'll have to see if Eric, well, potentially if it's got a Trick Room mode, maybe it might be a slower variant.
It could be, but I feel like a lot of the Ogerpon nowadays are bulked down just a little bit, trained to be a bit more defensive, so I kind of imagine that Ogerpon, or at least if you're Eric, you have to assume that this Ogerpon might just be slower overall than your own Fluttermane, or at the very least, you have to try to go into this next turn expecting that your Fluttermane can get the outspeed.
Yeah, and it very likely can. Especially if you train it faster than Ogerpon. Fluttermane can still do that while getting a special attack boost. Then you do sacrifice a lot of speed, and yet there we go. Fluttermane is outspeeding and knocking out this Iron Crown.
Iron Crown down for the count. Terastallization off the board. With this Hearthflame, Ogerpon still getting a chance to move. It does have its pick of target. It can secure a knockout onto this Incineroar, or it's going to secure a knockout onto the Fluttermane. A one-hit knockout, and that is without grassy terrain, by the way.
Yeah, that is incredibly powerful here. And yeah, you do get the U-turn into the Ogerpon, so you are going to be able to intimidate it after what we've seen. The Ursaluna is waiting in the back, comes in, and then you've got fake-out pressure. I think just as the Psychic Terrain will disappear, there might be one more turn, but I don't think that really matters at this point because the Regidrago is still incredibly healthy. It did take a tiny little bit of damage from Fake Out, but that is definitely still going to be strong enough to get the knockout on this Incineroar for sure, and it will do absolutely massive damage to this Ursaluna. So yeah, the Psychic Terrain, it does seem like it is still just about around, so not even a need for a double protected to stall out the Fake Out. There we go, thank you very much, Eric. There was one more turn of Psychic Terrain, but yeah, this is just going to be a Dragon Energy. Incineroar's gone, and then you get to follow up with your Wood Hammer, and Ursaluna's also gone, and Roberto should take this game one.
Really should happen with the Ogerpon and the Regidrago being faster than this Ursaluna. But if something out of the ordinary is to happen, maybe Eric can actually try to weave in one final attack. That is why he is not going to be leaving this game just yet, and even committing the Terastallization onto the Ursaluna just in case that is not the full target of the two attacks from this Regidrago. Now, it does have the opportunity to go for something like the Draco Meteor or the Earth Power. In fact, it's actually going to be the Ogerpon that's going to be the fastest, so it gets to go for the Wood Hammer into the Ursaluna. It does keep it around, but the Dragon Energy from a very, very healthy Regidrago is enough to get the double KO. And so Roberto wins the first game in this Masters Division Top 8 match against Eric Rios.
That was expertly done as well. I don't know why you're shaking your head there, Roberto. You played fantastically in that first game.
I think he was stressed.
Yeah, he stole out Trick Room with a hyper offense team, and that's one of the hardest things to do in the game. So it was really, really nicely done. And then there was the mix-up of, well, actually, no, I'm not going for Trick Room. Here's my Fluttermane, and it's gone. And then suddenly Regidrago was able to sweep through. Because, of course, if Fluttermane's still around, then the Regidrago can't go for those Dragon Energies very safely. But because the Fluttermane was one-shot by that Wood Hammer, and it did need to be Wood Hammer, Ivy Cudgel would not have been enough. It had to be Wood Hammer for that extra damage output. That was what secured it, because then that just completely freed up that Regidrago for that last Dragon Energy.
Yeah, the base power of the Wood Hammer was certainly important, as you see that one-hit knockout into the Fluttermane. I was going to say, I think for sure you get a knockout onto either, but I was not expecting the Ogerpon to go after the Fluttermane in that particular instance. Either way, it worked out great for Roberto in that very first game. One more game win, and he gets to move on to the top 4, where Zachary Weed is waiting in the bracket. Eric Rios has got to get himself back into this one with a game win, but that Ursaluna and the Porygon 2 strategy was not enough. I felt like that Ursaluna never got any turns in Trick Room. Yeah, but didn't get any turns in Trick Room.
It didn't at all. And if you're going for the Trick Room strategy, you kind of need the Ursaluna in Trick Room to be able to do the damage. Porygon 2 and Incineroar were doing respectable damage, but you don't need respectable damage when you're matched by the absolutely massive damage that can come out from Roberto's team.
I think it was tough because if you go back to the way that first game started, it was Porygon 2 next to the Incineroar. Incineroar went for the fake out, just to be able to stop the Regidrago from being able to use that Dragon Energy, but then it left it in an awkward position where it didn't have the ability to go for something like a parting shot because it's an Assault Vest set. It doesn't have those supportive tools available that make those pivot outs just a little bit more comfortable. But we see a run back of the leads for Roberto as well as Eric as we enter into this game number 2. An attack boost again from this Porygon 2 from the download ability, and that Quark Drive is going to be boosted to the special attack for the Iron Crown.
Yeah, so we're in exactly the same mind game on that first turn. Yes, there could be an Indeedee switch in the face of the fake out, but given how the game 1 ended up turning out, I don't think that was particularly necessary on this first turn. The Dragon Energy and Tachyon Cutter, based on just the damage that Tachyon Cutter did, probably does KO the opposing Porygon 2, and that's why we're seeing that repeat. The Regidrago would do more damage here, so that is the choice of fake out target.
Now, but the Tachyon Cutter into the Porygon 2 is going to, once again, just bring that Porygon 2 to about half as the Trick Room gets set up. I almost wonder if there's ever an opportunity for you to consider going for something like an Ice Beam into the Regidrago, but we've seen the same outcome from that first turn of Game 1 as we see in Game 2.
Yeah, and of course you've got to contend with the Indeedee switch in to get the Expanding Force active. Of course, not going to be trying to block the fake out that could be happening. That's already done on the first turn. But we saw how massive damage the Iron Crown was able to do with those Expanding Forces. It does about half damage to the Porygon, and with the helping hand behind it as well, it was doing 75%. It was doing huge damage here, but here is a Terrestrialization once again. If we're seeing it, yeah, there's no switches. We saw a Protect in the first game on the Regidrago and an attack with the Iron Crown. Are we going to be seeing a repeat once again?
Right. I mean, the Protects were so important to help stall out those turns of Trick Room, but there's not going to be a Protect this time around. Roberto using this second turn, knowing that Porygon 2 would have loved to be able to go for a recover here, saying maybe I get away with something that I'm not supposed to. Terra Blast from the Iron Crown goes once again into this Incineroar, bringing it quite low, but any follow-up damage here from the Regidrago might be good to get it over the edge, but not when the Regidrago is going to be that low in HP.
Yeah, that's not much damage at all. We're so used to the massive damage that Dragon Energy can do, but of course, based on HP stat, that really can't do it. If it would have been something like a Draco Meteor or even just Earth Power would have done it into Incineroar, I reckon, even without the Life Orb. It might have been close with the Assault Vest, but Draco Meteor would have for sure done it. But I guess you don't want to give that paid switch into the Ursaluna while Trick Room's still active.
Yeah, it would be really tough. But that's kind of the calls you have to make when you are in this situation, trying to get yourself into the top 4 of an international championship. Roberto says, okay, I got a little damage down, but maybe the Regidrago is going to be better when this Trick Room is over. Here's the Indeedee to set up the Psychic terrain, and this Iron Crown is going to do just a little bit of damage to it thanks to the Porygon 2. Now we see the knockoff into the Indeedee, again, just removing that Rocky Helmet, but it's the Expanding Force. It's done a good chunk, but this Porygon 2 is around, and Incineroar doesn't actually get, it doesn't get knocked out on that last turn.
That's what you're looking for, right? You want the paid switch into the Ursaluna so that it can start making use of the Trick Room, and it hasn't been able to hit the field here. We've already gone through 2 turns of the Trick Room, and this will be the 3rd, so whatever the last turn will be, you could easily just protect out that last turn, and we've seen the Iron Crown was able to shrug off a load of attacks here, so it's comfortable to go on the offensive.
The Helping Hand is going to make this damage calc on the Porygon 2 a little bit tough. I don't know whether or not the Porygon 2 can actually get through this, but I know the Indeedee cannot get through another knockoff. Incineroar is going to remain on a sliver of HP because it's not going to be affected by this Expanding Force thanks to its Dark typing. But with the Expanding Force into the Porygon 2, it actually just barely hangs on. So great recovery from Eric to go for that on the beginning of this turn.
Yeah, and we're down to the final turn of Trick Room here. Granted, the Porygon and the Incineroar will be able to make use of it, but Ursaluna, if it's waiting in the back, surely will not. If the Porygon goes for a recover, it's not going on the offensive, and then Incineroar won't be able to do too much here. You can't go for a knockoff into the Iron Crown for too much damage because it's already used its booster energy. So yeah, I think probably U-turn would be the most likely thing coming out from Incineroar, because then you get to preserve it, you get to intimidate the opposing Ogerpon as well in the future. But then if you're going for U-turn, you're just not really doing the damage, and you haven't made use of the Trick Room as well as you would like once again.
Well, I think it's hard too, because if you go for U-turn,
you
might sacrifice a little bit of damage and HP onto kind of your big sweepers with the Flutter Mane and the Ursaluna that are back. But with the recover onto the Porygon too, and maybe if you get a little bit of extra damage, I mean, it's helpful. But yeah, Spiky Shield is going to actually be the target of the attack there from the Incineroar. The Porygon 2 hangs on this time around, so Helping Hand was really necessary if you want to see that Porygon 2 actually take the edge.
But you didn't want to KO the Porygon 2 that turn, because now you've got an absolutely guaranteed double knockout into this incredibly low HP Porygon Incineroar. And if there's a switch out, well, what's the switch in? A Flutter Mane? That's going to go down to the combination of Expanding Force and an attack from the Ogerpon. Well, the other switch in, Ursaluna, that's going to go down to a combination of Expanding Force and whatever attack that the Ogerpon would want to go for. So that's exactly what Roberto was going for here. No switch out. Easy double KO.
Yeah, super safe for Roberto to just go on the offensive with an attack from both the Ogerpon as well as Iron Crown. And this is looking really tough here for Eric. You have a full health Flutter Mane in the back. And of course, like your two Pokemon that are going to get revealed here will be at full HP. But for Roberto, I think he's like, I feel like this is still an okay position to be in.
Yeah, I think this is entirely reasonable. The thing I'm curious about is if the Flutter Mane goes for a substitute, will Tachyon Cutter still be able to get the one-move knockout? Because it will break the substitute and then still hit the Flutter Mane. I would suspect that Flutter Mane's very good special defense stat will be able to save it from just one Tachyon Cutter taking 75% of its HP. But if that's not going to be the case, then I guess you can go for the Expanding Force once again. That would potentially break substitute. You've only got one more turn of Psychic Terrain again. Thank you very much, Eric. So you can still go for the Expanding Force, and that's going to be able to pick up a knockout in combination with whatever the Ogerpon would want to go for. And we're seeing the Protect come out from both Pokemon on Eric's side of the field, so that's surely to stall out the last turn of Psychic Terrain.
Well, of course, because then that means that Expanding Force on the following turn is going to be a single target attack. And Roberto then has to pick and choose which Pokemon he actually wants to go after. It's still a tough uphill battle for Eric as he has these final two Pokemon remaining. But if he guesses correctly what the target of this attack is going to be, maybe even gets in another random Protect, then perhaps he can keep himself in this. The added benefit of the double Protect here is that Ursaluna now does have its Guts activated. Yeah,
that is another benefit for sure. I'm just curious, I don't think you could have the opportunity to go for a substitute here. Because if, for example, there's just Wood Hammer and Tachyon Cutter into that Flutter Mane, well, that's going to be able to surely pick up the knockout. I guess, actually, no, if there's substitute, the Ogerpon will outspeed, break the substitute, but then Tachyon Cutter, if there's a Terra Water that's so unique on the Flutter Mane, that could save it. But then at the same time, you need to save the Ursaluna from the Wood Hammer by going for the Terra Ghost. So that, it's almost like a lose-lose, because you've got so much damage that can come out from Roberto's side, and you can't mitigate both. You have to go for the Terra Water because of the Tachyon Cutter, but you have to go for the Terra Ghost because of the Wood Hammer, and you can only choose one.
The Terrestrialization important, and so will be the follow-up damage. It looks like Eric is happy to lock in the Terra Ghost on the Ursaluna and cross his fingers, hope for the best. This Terra Ghost is going to be really nice to help save this Ursaluna from the Wood Hammer. We even saw in that last game that if the Ogerpon does attack into this Flutter Mane, you are going to be able to get a knockout with the Wood Hammer. Moonblast instead into the Iron Crown is going to secure one extra knockout on the board here for Eric, bringing Roberto down to his final two Pokemon. So what did this Ogerpon end up doing? It actually made a call into the Ursaluna, so that Terra Ghost was perfect. Now you might be felled to, you were definitely going to be felled to this facade here. A critical hit not mattering at all. Regidrago gets to come back in, but Flutter Mane with that speed advantage and the Regidrago being as low as it is, there are not many ways that Roberto can actually get through this anymore. It's going to be either the Flutter or the Ursaluna that will be able to get the cleanup of this game and keep Eric in this match.
Yeah, we're going to a game 3 for sure at this point. This is just the Moonblast, and Regidrago has been KO'd. A very nice call there, because that could have been a redirection with the Ogerpon to soak up the Moonblast very, very comfortably, and it could have been Tachyon Cutter into Flutter Mane instead, but it didn't go for the Terra Water. It left itself open, but Eric made the right call and has taken us into that all-important Game 3.
It is hard when you have to think about where is my opponent going to put the damage.
Yeah.
Because in all the scenarios that you laid out there, it really is about Eric kind of deciding what is Roberto's priority. Is it going to be dealing with my Flutter Mane Can I maybe see a world where Roberto just decides to leave it? Maybe see if I'm going for a double protect? There are so many different scenarios that could have played out on that turn. But Eric getting it right means that we get to go to a game 3.
Yeah, and I couldn't be happier because we're getting all the action that we can possibly get here. And it was a really, really good game. I thought that the last time the Trick Room ending, and then, well, here's the guaranteed double KO views. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, that didn't matter because there were 2 other Pokemon waiting in the back that could do something about it. And yeah, that final call, I think if the Terra Water had happened on the Flutter Mane and it had just been Wood Hammer and Protect on the Iron Crown, then that's surely the game for Roberto. And again, even if there was just, even if there wasn't Terra Water on the Flutter Mane, we saw the Wood Hammer be able to one-shot that Flutter Mane in game 1. So if the Iron Crown would have protected, or even if the Ogerpon had gone for the redirection in the Follow Me, that could have been a Tachyon Katakeo. But I think that the unique terror of Terra Water was what put Roberto off that play.
Hard to make a decision when you might be facing unfamiliar territory, but now we have had a lot of information exchanged between Eric and Roberto as we enter into this game 3. Not a huge surprise to me that we're seeing the same leads as we've seen from the 2 previous games to kick off this final one to decide who will move on to the top 4.
Yeah, we're going to just see that repeat. It seems like Eric is perfectly content to go for that fake out, and of course the Regidrago is the main target because that will do the most amount of damage. But do you switch in the Indeedee this time to be able to potentially get extra damage with the Expanding Force? Because if you do, then you'll be doing extra damage to that Porygon 2, while also getting your Indeedee straight on the field for those helping hands. Or do we just see the same thing? Or maybe you're expecting Eric to switch it up potentially, but nope, here we go. Once again, all 3 games, fake out the Regidrago.
Yeah, I mean, you could have considered conditioning to be a part of this, but it is just going to be a complete run back of everything that we have seen so far. Porygon 2 getting to utilize that Trick Room, but now how is Roberto going to get himself out of this one? We saw the Regidrago go for a Protect on game 1, then it went for the Dragon Energy in game 2, and it has the potential here to either switch out again or go for a single target attack.
Yeah, we saw that Roberto was very content to go for the Terra Water Terra Blast into the Incineroar, and it is a 2-shot. We've definitely confirmed that. But if you go for that, then are you opening yourself up to potentially, well, I was going to say, potentially the Indeedee switching could have helped here to really start getting the offense, but there's the Terra once again.
Yeah, the Terra means that Roberto is going to keep this Iron Crown in. We have already seen him commit to this Pokemon in games 1 and 2, but it's about what this Regidrago might do here. It's not actually going to leave the field, and it's not going to protect, as Eric double targets into the Iron Crown. It is a Terra Blast as well as a knockoff to bring this Iron Crown to below half, but with a Terra Blast into the Incineroar, this could be a big KO for Roberto. What does he decide to do with this Regidrago? It's going to be the Draco Meteor. He splits the difference with the damage into these 2 Pokemon, and Porygon 2 is out. Is this a good thing for Eric, knowing that he has a free switch into the Ursaluna?
This will allow this Ursaluna to actually benefit from Trick Room in this game. Oh, but if that would have been a Dragon Energy, though, that would have knocked out the Incineroar with the Porygon 2 there, and then that brings in the Flutter Mane in Trick Room that can't be reversed, and then surely you're going to be able to take care of that Flutter Mane very comfortably. But no, the Draco Meteor, playing it safe in case the knockoff did go into the Regidrago, because then it's still able to pick up the knockout on the Porygon 2. But here is the Ursaluna in Trick Room, granted, not yet burned, so it might not be able to do the damage that Eric is looking for, but the Iron Crown is under half here. I would suspect that it is going to be in range of even an Unguts boosted Headlong Rush.
If Headlong Rush KOs the Iron Crown, then you've gotten rid of at least 1 Pokemon. I think Eric is hoping that Roberto actually removes this Regidrago from play since it is at -2 thanks to that Draco Meteor. It's why we see the switch in of this Flutter Mane. So hope you get the knockout onto the Iron Crown. Iron Crown just goes for Protect, so maybe this is going to be a bit safer. And Flutter Mane might get in scot-free. But the Regidrago has not gone for a Protect on this turn, so it is going to get off another attack. And it will be the Draco Meteor into this Ursaluna at -2. That still really hurts because that Life Orb is still intact.
Yeah.
And that Ursaluna gets chunked to half.
Yeah, that was a very, very nice play there for Roberto. Of course, we are still in Trick Room, and the Flutter Mane has just joined the field, but we still have to contend with this Ursaluna that is now Guts boosted. So I would expect that now we've got the Guts, the Iron Crown should be in range of Earthquake, but Regidrago, that will be very, very close. But even if it doesn't, then it's not going to be doing the damage it needs to now, because it's got that -4 after 2 Dracos.
So the Regidrago is definitely not a threat to this Flutter Mane, and it's not going to be a threat for a knockout onto the Ursaluna unless we see something like a crit. Roberto also knows that this Iron Crown would get knocked out to a single target attack from this Ursaluna, so it's going to be the Indeedee that takes its place instead. At the very minimum, if this Ursaluna makes contact with this Indeedee, it does get a bit of Rocky Helmet recoil, even if it is a 1-hit KO. So Indeedee goes down for the count. Regidrago is going to still move on this turn, and with that extra bit of damage, maybe it gets it over the line.
With the burn.
The burn is going to be enough to knock out this Ursaluna, so I think that Regidrago has actually done a lot here. But Flutter Mane at the end of this turn, despite the speed that it has, is going to set up a substitute for itself, and that is something that Eric gets to play around with once this Trick Room expires, or even just to help him get through these final turns of Trick Room, with this Flutter Mane being as vulnerable as it is in terms of the speed it sits at.
Yeah, but we are still in that Trick Room. So now do you bring in the Iron Crown once again to try and get that Tachyon Cutter, break the substitute, and still hit the Flutter Mane afterwards? It does seem like that is what Roberto is going for. Of course, there is still Psychic Terrain on the field, so Fake Out is not an option for this Incineroar, but Incineroar will be underspeeding everything, so it will be able to get an attack off, and based on the damage we've seen in the previous game, Knockoff shouldn't be able to KO either Pokemon here, and that should allow you to be able to KO this Incineroar with the Terra Blast, and then that allows the Ogerpon to potentially be able to beat this Flutter Mane as well, so long as you can break that substitute. I think this substitute's the only thing keeping Eric in this game. If there wasn't that substitute, Ogerpon will be able to take the game after a Terra Blast KOs the Incineroar, but if you can preserve that well enough, that might be the edge that Eric needs.
Flutter Mane has its choice of attacking option with either the Moonblast or the Shadow Ball. But since the Regidrago is going to be at -6, I feel like Roberto might want the opportunity here to actually switch it out. So can Eric make the call?
Oh,
there is going to be a switch in, and there is one. So Regidrago retreats for now, and it is going to be the Ogerpon that comes into its place. So if Eric can get rid of this, then he might actually still have a chance in this game. The Flutter Mane is going to be the first to move, as it does have that terrestrialization it can expend, and it's going to be able to keep it safe from this Tachyon Cutter. But it is just a tough call if that first Tachyon Cutter is going to be enough to actually get through that substitute.
Yeah, I don't think with the Terra Water it will. I reckon 2 will. But yeah, that Terra Water is going to be really, really nice because Eric has called it. It would seem the Flare Blitz went into the Regidrago that turned into an Ogerpon. That's got to be in range of Shadow Ball now. And yeah, the Terra Blast is going to KO the Incineroar, but surely this is a follow-up Shadow Ball to KO that opposing Ogerpon. And then this Flutter Mane should be able to take it.
Eric's gonna have to hope so. With Roberto and Eric tied 1 apiece, the stakes could not be higher for them to make it into the top 4. Flutter Mane's Shadow Ball lands into the Ogerpon, securing the knockout, and Roberto gets to bring back in this Regidrago, but the substitute still being intact. And with Flutter Mane having this speed, Flutter Mane will be able to actually take a knockout onto one of these Pokemon.
Yeah, and we've seen in the previous game, Moonblast is able to knock out this Iron Crown from the amount of HP it's at. So yeah, like I mentioned, the substitute is being very, very useful here for Eric. You've only got Earth Power. Well, actually, no, you can. I think with the Terra Water, you can go for the Draco Meteor now to be able to KO the Flutter Mane. So it might come down to just which one do you attack and which one protects, because it doesn't have access to Dazzling Gleam. It sacrificed that for substitute. So here comes the Flutter Mane Protectly. So if Roberto went for a Protect with one of his Pokemon, he might need to consider a double Protect. So that's surely got to be the target coming out from Eric. Oh,
there is not going to be a Protect at all. So there is still a really tough mind game to play here, as Eric has to pick a target on the next turn and hope that he gets it correct, because Protect is available to both the Iron Crown as well as the Regidrago on this next turn.
Yeah, so surely one of them's got to protect. Like, Roberto has to protect one of them, because if Moonblast goes off, Eric should be able to win, because the substitute will keep the Flutter Mane safe, and then Moonblast will KO the other Pokemon. So which one protects? Roberto has to go for one of them, and is Eric going to call correct?
It is just so tough here, because I feel like it's easy to call the Protect on the Regidrago, but maybe it's just going to be the Iron Crown also going for Protect here. But yeah, Roberto gets the call correctly with the Regidrago having to eat, and is actually going to break. So Flutter Mane doesn't have that extra layer of protection heading into the next turn. Eric does have the ability to go for a Protect here to at least get through the final turn of the Psychic Terrain, but it is still a tough call because you've got to KO one of these Pokemon.
Yeah, you've got to protect here, right? Psychic Terrain and Dragon Energy will surely be able to pick up. No, protect. Going on the offense. And Moonblast is able to pick up the Regidrago, but we're in Psychic Terrain, and it's now a single target expanding force that's coming out from this Iron Crown. That's got to be enough to be able to pick up this Flutter Mane.
Unless it is really bulky, but it is not. Roberto Parente deals with the final Pokemon for Eric Rios in the third game and moves on to the top 4 at the Europe International Championships.
And also secures his guaranteed invite to the World Championships.